Today, when many people think about the Vikings, they often tend to think about them as being tall, dirty, and violent, with horned helmets. But is that really how the Vikings looked in the Viking Age? Let's take a look at this question today. There's a lot of different sources available from the Viking Age to us about their physical appearance, but the most important source is probably from the excavations, where there's been found 500 Viking skeletons, and that is just in Denmark. So you might wonder, what does these excavations tell us about their appearance? Well, the average height for a Viking during the Viking Age was about 8 to 10 centimeters shorter than we are today. That is about 3 to 4 inches. Because the skeletons that the archaeologists have found reveals that a man was around 172 centimeters tall, which is about 5.6 feet. And the women had an average height of 158 centimeters, which is about 5.1 feet. But of course, this is just the average. Some people were shorter and some people were taller, just like today. People who had access to better food in the Viking Age were often taller than the average person due to having a better lifestyle. The height of a Viking is also often mentioned by the people they came in contact with. For instance, the Arab diplomat Ibn Fadlan met the Rus people at Volga, which is today in modern-day Russia. Ibn Fadlan said, quote, "I have seen the Rus as they came on their merchant journeys and encamped by the Volga. I have never seen more perfect physical specimens, tall as date palms, blond and ruddy. There were neither tunics nor kaftans, but the men wear a garment which covers one side of the body and leaves one hand free. Each man has an axe, a sword and a knife, and keeps each by him at all times. The swords are broad and ground of Frankish sort. From fingertips to their neck, each of them has a collection of trees, figures, and the like." Which means the Vikings may have had tattoos, but we are not certain. But the art of tattoos were known to the Vikings. Other sources also mention the Vikings as having been tall. For instance, in the East Frankish chronicles called Annals of Fulda, it mentions the appearance of the Vikings at the battle in 884, where the Franks defeated a Viking raid in Saxony. In that battle, such men are said to have been killed among the Northmen, as had never been seen before among the Frankish people, namely in their beauty and the size of their bodies. And now when we talk about the bodies, it was also mentioned a lot. The Vikings are often portrayed as being strong with big muscles, and that is actually not that far from the truth. The Vikings were more robust and muscular than the average person, and that was for both men and women. One of the reasons for this is of course the hard physical work that was needed to be done to survive in a harsh landscape like Scandinavia in the Viking Age. But the facial appearance of the people in the Viking Age was also different than it is today. Men and women were more alike than we are today. The women had more prominent brow ridges, which are typically a muscular feature, and the men had a more feminine face than today, with a less prominent jaw and brow ridges. Because the facial features being more alike for men and women in the Viking Age, it is sometimes difficult to decide if a Viking skeleton was a male or female, at least based on the skull alone. In movies and series about the Vikings, we often see them portrayed with blonde hair, which is not entirely accurate. Just like today, people had all kinds of hair colors in the Viking society. But of course, some hair colors were more dominant in the Viking Age. If you think that the most dominant hair color in the Viking Age was blonde hair, then you are unfortunately wrong. There were in fact two dominant hair colors in the Viking society: blonde hair and red hair. People with blonde hair were mostly located in northern Scandinavia, for instance around Stockholm in Sweden. And people with red hair were mostly located in the western part of Scandinavia, for instance in Denmark. The men in the Viking Age loved their hair and beard. In fact, they loved it so much they sometimes got their nickname after it. For instance, the famous Vikings Sven Forkbeard and Harald Fairhair both got their nickname because of it. Sven Forkbeard most likely got his nickname because his beard was divided in two, so it looked like a fork. And Harald Fairhair probably had a fine head of hair, which earned him his nickname. One of the most popular Danish hairstyles in the Viking Age was a reverse mullet. A reverse mullet is when you have long hair in the front and short hair in the back of the head. Somewhat like Bjørn from the series Vikings had. I think it was in season 2. You can Google that if you want to see it. I cannot use those images due to copyright. The women had of course also beautiful hairstyles, and they often had long hair that was attractively styled, maybe with some beads or other accessories in their hair, if they could afford them. The people in the Viking Age were not robots coming off an assembly line. And by that I mean, not all of the Vikings had a long beard, as the media like to portray them. They were all individuals with their own opinions and styles to express themselves, just like we do today. So just because you have short hair and no beard does not mean you cannot be part of a Viking community. The amount of hair that grows on your head does not determine if you can be a Viking or not. I know it might be silly that I say this, but I think some people need to hear it. We know from excavations and written sources that the Vikings took good care of themselves and had a good hygiene. There has been found many beauty items such as combs, earpicks and tweezers. According to a Spanish Arab who visited Hedeby around the year 1000, both men and women wore makeup to look younger and more attractive. Viking men had in general a lot of success with the local women in England. They looked great, were clean and smelled good. Unlike the Englishmen, the Vikings took a bath every Saturday, which was more than they did. Today, the Danish word for Saturday, which is lørdag, comes from the old Nordic word lagerdag, which means washing day. So we can probably assume there is some truth to it. Neither beauty nor life last forever. So how long could a typical Viking expect to live? The average life expectancy in the Viking Age was much lower than it is today. A man could on average expect to live to around 40 to 50 years. But the women had the shortest lifetime expectancy in Scandinavia and could on average expect to live 38 years. The reason why the women had a lower life expectancy was because of the risk of giving birth to a child. Not only can it be dangerous to give birth to a child, you are also very vulnerable when you are pregnant. In the next video I will talk about what kind of clothes and jewelry the Vikings wore. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you are new to the channel, remember to hit that subscribe button. See you next Sunday for another video. Thank you for watching.